The federal government is literally in its 11th hour, but that didn't stop it from banning another 179 firearms today. Firearms primarily used by hunters and farmers. Now, we all know they're not actually going to get around to collecting these guns, leaving us all to ask, is this just another bad faith pre-election campaign tactic? I would argue that it is. Joining me today to discuss is the Canadian Coalition for Firearms Rights spokesperson, Tracey Wilson. I'm Rachel. Welcome back to Rachel Parker. So, Tracey, can you start by explaining exactly what this announcement does?
Yeah, so there was a couple parts to it, actually. They basically reintroduced the yellow and red flag laws from C-21, the legislation that received royal assent back in 2023. So in typical Liberal form, they, proceed with measures, but never actually implement them. So today was a re-announcement of already existing measures from legislation that came into effect 2 years ago that has yet to be implemented. Aside from that, they talked about forming a committee to review the classification system that we use to classify firearms here in Canada. But the big piece of this was an announcement of another 179 previously legal sporting rifles and hunting rifles that will be added to the ban list. So this is an ever-growing list from 2020, and we're now at about 2,400 models and variants that have been banned.
So really today what we learned that what was new is that there's 179 new firearms that are banned. And from what you're saying, these are firearms that are really used by hunters.
Yeah, that's right. So in Canada, there's really, it's kind of limited what you can use firearms for. The overwhelming majority of firearms are used for either hunting, sport shooting, or collecting. That's basically the only legal reasons to own firearms. So the Liberals, once again, have continued their attack on legal gun owners at a time when, we've got rising crime and violence. We've got these violent home invasions with armed thugs. Even the Liberal leadership candidates admit that you've got the majority of firearms used in crime in Canada are illegally smuggled from the States. So the Liberal response to all of this is to continue their attack on licensed legal gun owners and the businesses that support them.
I remember that the last time the Liberals were going after hunters and farmers, the NDP actually said this is not okay because they were hearing from their constituents that this was really going to affect their livelihood. I specifically remember hearing from up north in the territories that a lot of, Indigenous groups rely on those firearms to hunt and to essentially feed themselves. How will those groups specifically be impacted by this new ban?
Well, here's the funny thing. Today in the announcement, Associate Minister Rachel Bendayan said that this ban comes into effect immediately. These firearms are immediately prohibited. So, of course, having them out and using them would be a criminal offense. However, she did not provide us a list of what those firearms are. So, at my local range here, I've got people calling me from the range wanting to know if the guns they're using are banned. And I can't answer that question because they haven't released the list. Now, she did say in her announcement that she mentioned the SKS and talked about how it was formerly a military rifle used way back in the olden days by the military, but has since then been repurposed as a hunting rifle. And it's totally legitimate and useful for hunting. And in fact, it's widely popular amongst Indigenous hunters. So she said today that although she believes that is an assault style firearm, they didn't ban it today because, of course, that would really upset our Indigenous Canadians who rely on that to feed their families. Now, again, I haven't seen the list itself, but rifles in Canada are only used for sporting and hunting purposes. So to say this isn't a hunting gun ban is false because that's one of the only two reasons to own firearms in Canada.
I have to ask that we've seen the liberals really attacking US President Donald Trump, and that has been quite effective as we're in the middle of this trade war. We've actually seen their poll numbers go up quite a bit. The conservatives had a 20-point lead late at the end of 2024. That lead has lessened significantly. To me, this seems like a government in its 11th hour, a last bit attempt, and a bad faith effort to increase their poll numbers headed into what many of us expect to be a federal election, with a writ dropping, as soon as maybe late this month. What are your thoughts?
Well, I totally agree with you, and I'll tell you why. Today, at time of recording this, today is their very last, weekday work day of this existing leader. Sunday, the Liberals will announce their new leader, who of course will be the de facto prime minister. And so you see they're doing all these, crazy things in the 11th hour to get them done. But if you think about it, they started these gun bans back in 2020. Gun owners are protected by an amnesty out until the end of October of 2025. So you're talking about, the Liberals' opinion is these guns are just far too dangerous for civilian uses, and they don't want them in their communities. Yet we're forced to keep them for 5.5 years at minimum. There was talk today in the announcement as well in the French version. It didn't quite come through on translation, but she talked about extending that amnesty out into next March of 2026. So it just seems like they keep kicking the can down the road. Not that I'm in a hurry for them to start actually confiscating these guns, but they obviously have no plan to actually get it done. Otherwise, this would be a moot point. So when she talks about reducing the number of guns in circulation, she's actually lying, because we've still got everything that they've banned since 2020. We've got them.
When you're saying that they keep kicking this down the line, it doesn't seem like they're actually trying to get it done. As I've mentioned, we're looking at a federal election this year. I still think it's the Conservatives to lose. I'm still expecting a change in party that's leading the government later this year. So what's your recommendation to, firearms owners at this point?
Well, my message to firearms owners across Canada is this, you need to find the party out there that has a viable chance of winning, who isn't going to take your stuff. It's literally that simple. If we re-elect a Liberal government in this country, they will have no choice but to get to the business of kicking in the doors of Canadian firearms owners and confiscating your legally acquired property. It's that simple. So it's not just voting isn't going to be enough. You can increase your vote by talking about this issue with your friends, your family, your colleagues. On election day, drive people to the polls. Book time off, take your holidays and devote it to volunteering for candidates that are friendly to your cause. We can absolutely influence the outcome of this election if we get off our butts and get it done.
Tracey, thank you so much.
Thanks for the opportunity.
All right, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to this breaking news story. I'm sure that there'll be more developments about what exactly is happening. As Tracey said, the government hasn't even announced which firearms are included in this ban. I suspect they threw this together in a very last minute, last ditch attempt to try to paint the United States as the bad guy once again, and the tyrannical Liberal government as our fearless leaders. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. Do you think that the government is actually going to get around to collecting these firearms? And I will be back in a few days with more content for you all. Hope that you guys have a great weekend. God bless.